Well, thank you for coming today. This is my first presentation back in the UK in 10 years. I'm based in the US. I've been out there about 14 years now, but I'm from the UK, started my HR career in the UK and moved across to the United States. And that's where I've been for about 14 years, currently out of Denver and LA. I wanted to talk about this topic today, mostly because when I'm traveling internationally and in the UK, HR has the same reputation globally. So I wanted to talk about the issues that we face and come up against when consulting with businesses, but also how we can shift it. So I will go back to my notes. Sorry, I was all over the place and haven't had time to really sort of think about it. I keep changing what I'm writing as I'm going along. So the script writer was killing me as I was sending notes on the airplane. Saying, we should add this. And he's like, you're killing me. You've got 3 days to memorize this. And I was like, we'll get it done. But when I got asked to speak here by the conference holders, I was surprised because I'm probably the most un-HR person. I started with a law degree, went into consulting, and then worked my way up to a chief human resources officer in private equity, and then went back to consulting. But I really feel that we need to shift from the paradigm. So if you want to run away, you can. I'm not traditional HR, but I have been in it most of my career. Before I get on this topic, I want you to know that I love working in HR. I love being with businesses that want to do and be better, and I love helping make the employee experience better. Can you hear me? Sorry. And I want people to help grow their business. But I'm sure you saw this coming, but I really do feel HR can have more of an impact within our organizations. So what I might say might seem radical or obvious, but I want to talk about the paradigm, and the paradigm is not working for us at the moment. So you may agree or not agree with that statement, but I really feel that we should put some effort back into it. So recently, HR has been really putting the human first, right? It's been in employee-focused market, labor shortages. That's really what we've been focusing on to bring people back into the organization, whether benefits or things like that. I think that's important because humans are the best, craziest, and keep our day very entertaining. You never know what's going to happen next. But I do feel that maybe, just maybe, we've put the human first and the resources second. Looking at what we can do within the organizations and focusing too much towards that way. Again, not that I'm saying we shouldn't focus on people, but we should also have that strategic element. If we sort of look at what we have to do, we have to escape this paradigm. So within your organizations, how is HR viewed? I would say we are probably viewed as paper pushers, not problem solvers, purveyors of doom and gloom rather than strategic partners. In fact, when I mentioned to my friend in marketing that I was coming to an HR conference, he said, that's the worst place I'd ever want to be. He said, why do you want to be surrounded by the Grim Reapers? And I was like, is that what you guys think of us? And that's our reputation. I mean, I'm going to be honest. How many of us have been called Darth Vader, Captain No Fun, Merchant of Death? We've all heard it all. In fact, one location in the US used to play the song, dun, 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 as I walked in. I was like, until they get to know you, they assume you're there to fire someone. And I even said in the conference here, when someone says, you got to go to HR, what's your first thought? It is, man, I'm going to be fired, or I've done something wrong. And that's exactly what we have. And I think our reputation is deserved. I think if you think about it, we are responsible for compliance. We are responsible for terminations. Any problem that comes up in the workplace, it pretty much ends up on our desk one way or the other, which leads everyone to believe that with a quick reaction force, just swooping in to solve problems and make it all go away. Well, I like to think of myself as a superhero, like most HR people do, but I don't think it's the superhero that most people want to be. And nothing illustrates this story better than when I first moved to the US. I started reporting to a CFO. First time ever. and it was a medium-sized company in the US. It's already a shift from London. So I worked in Richmond, went to Tampa, Florida. Very different pace. I was told to slow down and not work so hard. But I reported to the CFO, and he made it very clear on day one, I do not value HR. I think you're a waste of time. I was like, awesome. This is fantastic. It was a surprise to me because I'd only ever reported to HR leaders. I was like a business partner. Business partners were a new thing. No one really knew what we did. And he came up to me and said, I just don't value this. So when working in London, I thought everyone loved us apart from employees. I didn't realize that senior leaders often viewed us not in a great light either. So he called me into his office and said, I want you to do an ROI of HR. Why should we have an HR department? And he says, nothing fluffy, as if we do those reports. I want something very data-driven. So I was like, great. Where do I even begin with this? So what I looked at was our turnover. We had a turnover issue. We also had an acquisition issue. And then we had a skills gap, a nationwide skills gap in the US for this particular role. It was welding. Baby boomers predicted to leave. So what would we do? So I produced a report of our current turnover, loss of revenue, attraction issues, compensation models, and I sort of bound it all together to show that actually if we changed how we trained and developed people and where we looked for talent and went earlier into the colleges, we could build a sustainable model. And what we hadn't realized within the organization is we had 2 certified trainers actually doing it as a side hustle, which we could have been paying them to train people within our facilities because we had the equipment and the expertise. And no one had thought about doing it. So I presented this. I got told, I was surprised an HR person came up with this. I was like, well, that's what we do is people. And this plan, which they used, is still in today, 10 years later. They actively go to colleges, get them early, and they transform them in the organization using their certified trainers. So this is the problem we face. We're not seen as adding value because we're not seen as producing value. And this is the problem that I try and solve with businesses all the time. So imagine if we could add value beyond administering benefits, new employee orientations, and other tactical methods, utilizing some of the technology here today. Imagine if we proactively went after business and helped it grow. And that's what I want to talk about today. It's not having a seat at the table because we've had those SHRM CIPD conversations for the last 20 years, and nothing has really changed to help us get forward. What I want to talk about today is actively looking at it. It's going to be uncomfortable because we have to change the way that we think within HR. So how can we do it? Well, like I said, most people think of us as the fun police, doom and gloom, and policies. Once I got called a policy dragon, and because I was driven by compliance, and they saw us as mitigating risk by putting reactive policies in place. And I don't think reactive policies are always bad. We do need to put them in for behavior, and we do need to put them in for laws. Things change, right? We have to put them in. But I think we should look at it this way. We shouldn't be seen as walking around as superior overlords, like dishing out punishments. And I think, and people laugh at this when I say this, because we are seen as the investigation unit, internal affairs unit within the company, only rooting out the bad guys. And I've met loads of HR professionals still today that tell me that's their job, is to get the bad guys and get them out of the company, or punish, or do this, or do the policies. And I'm thinking to myself, they must be in the minority, right? We have thought about changing this. So the question is have we? I mean, I'd like to think we have. However, our reputation has not moved along with the times. How many here in a party, when you say you work in HR, get the eye roll? Yeah, we all do. I actually lie and say I'm a salesman because I think you get a better reputation. But it's not only damaging our professional careers, it's also damaging small businesses. And this is why I wanted to talk about this today, is because I've had to deal with numerous lawsuits for small to medium-sized businesses because they don't bring in HR. They would rather bring in a lawn service to cut their grass and trim their plants before they bring in HR. And it may not seem like it if you work in a large organization, but a number of small to medium-sized businesses are winging it with no HR whatsoever. UK, dangerous. California, insane. Alabama, not so much. So in fact, I was actually called personnel by one of them guys that I was working with. He said, well, personnel, you're just going to do these folders right. I was like, no, we can do so much more than that. It's simply because they don't understand what we do, because we don't do a good job of educating people about everything we can do. So the traditional HR paradigm is holding us back. So we're viewed strictly as a compliance administrative organization, focused on tasks of payroll, benefits, policy. It seems simple enough. But how many of your companies see you as a cost center, an expense, a very expensive police force? And that's the problem, is if we're largely reactive and administrative and transactional, that's what the CFO thought, we're very easily replaceable because we aren't adding value to the organization. So going back to what I'm saying is, if you were to ask your senior leaders in your organization, what do they think you do? It's probably this: administrative tasks, paperwork, maintaining the status quo, avoiding risks, limited strategic business, a reactive approach to policies and issues, HR centered around cost reduction. I mean, this is pretty much how they see us globally. So if these are our key functions, no wonder senior leaders still see HR this way. So it's not central to how the business operates, both large and small. But there is a better way. Before I go into this, this is the recent studies done last year. And if you can see it, 76% of C-suite saw us as mostly being main focus of processing and procedure. 63 found that business leaders as just an admin role. That is how they're still viewing us today, even after all the times we've tried to change. But like you, how many people have you interviewed for HR roles? A lot of people, right? And the common response to is, why do you want to be in HR? Can you guess? Why do you want to be in HR? I love people. Give that 5 years. 2. That sends shivers down my spine, because yes, we should look after the people, but that shouldn't be the main focus of what we're doing. Instead, what happens if the answer was, I love to make businesses grow. I want to make employees better. I want to make strategic decisions and solve problems that benefit the business and the employees. So we cast a vision. I think that's the lasting real impact that we can have on our companies. So if we believe we're strategic partners, if we do this, our reputation and scopes will change. And I will go on to how, but I'm going to talk about why this is passionate to me. We have to force our consulting business. So I actually didn't say that. It's like, we run a consulting business internationally. And I stepped out of HR because I was tired of being told no. Someone bringing in McKinsey, giving the same answer for £200,000 and then swanning off. And I'm like, well, that's fantastic. You know, you have an HR team that you're paying $1 million for, and you wouldn't even listen to a word we said. So if you throw a consultant in front of your title, suddenly you know everything, right? If we go on this and sort of talk about the influence we have, the way I started on this was to better understand your businesses. If you better understand your businesses, you can better influence people. And if you're able to influence business leaders, they'll show you respect. And the only way you get that is if they respect your opinion, if you understand the business and what's going on. So for example, if I ask you, how many of you know what the EBITDA is of your business? You know, a few of you? How many know what the bottom line is right now? Your growth market? What is sales achieving part of their quota this year in your organization? What's your marketing spend? What's your traction methodology? What's your cost of acquisition? Not many people can answer it. When we work as consultants, we're expected to know all this. We're expected to know every element of it financially. So escaping the HR paradigm requires a significant mind shift. New capabilities like pivot tables, which everyone loves, and approaches. HR can be a key enabler of business and its complexity in the environment. And HR is becoming increasingly complex and competitive with all the legal changes and everything that we have to face. So our forward-thinking organizations that I get to work with are already doing this. They're shifting all the tactical work to technology, only doing updates regularly, and they're making their HR really uncomfortable, shoving them in business meetings. So every sales meeting, every marketing meeting, every operations meeting, there's a member of HR in there so that they can come back and talk about how it goes with all the business. So this requires strategic decision-making and intentional action. So where do you start? This is the thing. Well, as I mentioned, you've got to get to know the business, especially the boring parts, which there are a lot of them. So HR should know from ops to sales, marketing to finance, where the current employee market is right now in salaries to where your leaders want to be next year for the next decade. Leaders understand the organization and they provide actionable value to it. So I'll take one example, utilization reports. We all love those. Most of those people think it just points out inefficiencies, but there's so much more. So what I do here is, talking about growing here, what we should be, is how many of you have done utilization reports before? Done utilization reports? Not many. So utilization report looks at the hours moved basically with employees, what they're producing against the company. So it's an efficiency metric based on what you're doing within the organization. And that's how most people view them. But we can also look at, do you need to hire people? Which departments go in? How much does your company pay for projects? When we did a utilization report on one of our clients, we found out it cost them $19,000 to produce a marketing pamphlet. 10 pages. Because once you throw all the marketing salaries in, how long it took them, all the different resources, that's what they were producing for a marketing thing. So now you could look at, do you outsource that? Why is it so inefficient? And what's going? So what's the cost? And what we found out was when we did the analysis across the organization, they were charging not enough to their clients. And that's why their profit margin was completely off. But by doing the analysis of each person within the organization, we were able to think about it. It's an easy way to look at it. I'm getting some feedback. Again, this report's not about catching people that are bad, not lazy. It's not about that. It's about looking at all your internal mechanisms and seeing how much it costs with your people to see what you should be charging and how profitable you are in the organization. And it's a really big thing when you start to analyze each department. And most people think that utilization is only for consultants. We've started implementing it into normal organizations, both salaried and hourly people, to see how much each thing costs produce under there. You can I say it's not about finding people, but you can definitely find people that aren't doing a whole lot very, very quickly. So HR should understand how everything fits together. Just this one example shows you how we can look at everything. Make decisions about hiring, salaries, compensation, banding. It all comes from this because that's how we sort of govern how much the company has in assets and money. Another example is succession planning. Well, I like to call it strength of the bench because I don't think we're waiting for someone to die to take the next level. So if you like sports, then you know. And most companies neglect this. And it's one of the biggest risks that you face, not having the next person in line. It's going to happen. Like I say, it's not just dying, it's leaving, retiring, or being headhunted by your competitors. So escaping the paradigm means shifting towards more of a strategic approach, and then how HR can actively help the organization and grow it. This involves HR repositioning to a value-added function. So like Darth Vader and the Grim Reaper, I have a plan. And it's become more agile and proactive HR. So I have 7 strategies that I've been using. I will talk about them. But these are the 7 I've been using recently that have really worked. And again, I do have a consultant in front, so you have to really push your way in on this one. So I meet with business leaders all across the company. I find out what their goals and what their needs are. And then I sit down and how I can be a partner in delivering these achievables. It's not about us. I want to find out what's about them. Do not wait for an invitation. It's never going to come. You have to force your way in. I put actively go out there, but really you have to force your way in. And to get to know the information. If they feel that we as HR professionals understand what they are trying to achieve, then they will open up to us. And then when they open up to us, you'll have the ability to drive the business and people strategy. Design progressive programs here, programs, initiatives, support innovation. My favorite one of doing this is interdepartment forums, getting people together at different levels to discuss the problems. So I copied this off the coaching circles. If any of you use management circles for coaching, Delaney, it's a big thing that they go around. The idea is managers get together and talk about their experiences to help speed up the learning of being a manager. That's actually a really good technique because we learn through memory and talking about things. So what we actually do is, rather than trying to solve the problem, which seems to be a male problem, is we actively listen and do diagnostic brainstorming and then don't offer solutions but keep talking around the problem. The idea of that shared learning means that all of you are faced and think about the same problem in the same way. And it speeds up management, coaching, and development. It's something that's being trialed and it's working really well. And I was lucky enough to be part of one of the pilot programs, and we saw a massive increase in manager attainment, coaching, learning, and development. So going back to this one with interdepartment, it gives a fresh approach, empowers employees, and you solve problems. And what we've also attached is competitions to it. So whoever solves the problem helps look at this in a different way. You can win time off, money, all different types of incentives. But employees feel empowered and part of the organization, and they feel like part of the solutions. And that helps them buy into the business. One of the biggest things we also get out of this is we identify new leaders. So we watch who's actually invested, how they are, and what they understand of the business, and that's how we identify new leaders with them. Also, I'd say leveraging data analytics. This is a solid performance management program. In order to have a robust performance management program, you have to have great managers that can give reviews, good job descriptions. I went into a company that had 300 positions and 900 job descriptions. That was definitely fun to work through. The high performance you can get from this, identify issues, who's struggling, opportunities for growth, but also promotions and terminations. But this is one of the biggest things. But everyone thinks you can throw in a performance management program and say, off you go. But then you have to teach the managers all sorts, which comes back to one of my points in a minute. Compelling employee experience. How many of you have worked on your employer brand? You worked on your employer brand? Heard of employer brands? Employer brand is just as important as your company brand. I almost see it as like your dating profile if you use online, because all these different things, and that's a different speech I did, was you're dating your employer because your financial ties tied together, it's hard to leave, etc. when you term. But this one really comes down to how you're perceived in the market. If you have a bad reputation as an employer, you will never get that top talent. They're researching, looking. Separation agreements don't work because Glassdoor's anonymous, and there's a lot of problems with separation agreements right now all over the place, and you can't bind someone in to not say stuff about you. So this is something really important to focus on. And I had an employer say, why can't we get any top tier people? I was like, well, you're rated 1.4 on Glassdoor. Google's rated you as the worst place to work in hell, which that's probably why you're not getting the Harvard graduate people that you want. But often it's overlooked. It takes months, if not years, to swing back a bad reputation. So it's something really to think about. And HR is vital to this because the onboarding experience, performance management, growth and opportunities to develop, but more importantly, making people feel good about being in the organization. See, swung it back to human, so we're not all monsters. The second one is serve as coach and advisor. So when we think about this, it's about how we can train and help our leaders get better. We should be able to coach managers on how to give feedback, how to deliver, what to look at, and how to give a fair review. How many of you do these performance reviews and you get the halo horn, same as me effect, like the recency effect? Oh, they're really good at this project, but we lost 3 clients last month. Yeah, but that was last month. It's like, come on, we've got to look at performance as a whole and also deliver continuous feedback as well. And the last one is measuring our impact. So this is looking at the human capital plan against the business strategy plan. How many of you have analyzed your human capital plan against the business strategy plan to identify how it do? This is something that's often forgotten. Like I said, some of you, this will be obvious if you're in an organization that's doing it, but I would say about 92% of all the businesses I go in, and they go up to 1,000 people, simply don't have this in place. And when I ask why, they say that they just sort of wing it. They did really well, we'll give them 10% increase. And it's like, well, now you're open to discrimination because now you've got different people in the organization and you've got no feasible way of why you gave increases or promotions and why you terminated or reduced someone's role. Like you're not actually measuring it. And then this also becomes a liability issue. So I'm sure there's strategies you've seen here. And so let's talk about that one. The human capital plan is going there. And it really does help tie in. So it's not about saving money. None of these are about this. It's about what we can do in the future to sort of push things forward. So I'm sure you've got strategies, and I would love to hear, because I got someone nodding at nearly everything. So it would be great to hear about it, and obviously if you want to link up. But what I want you to understand about all these sort of strategies are, they're future-focused. So if we change what we do for tomorrow, it will make it better today. But also, these are proactive strategies, not reactive strategies. And yeah, I guess there's time for reactive strategies, don't get me wrong, when things change. But I would argue that a proactive HR would prevent most of those problems arising in the first place. So in summary, before everyone's sort of like angering me, I was nervous about doing this in front of HR people. What I'm really trying to say is put the R back in HR. We need to see ourselves as a valuable resource for growth, not pain. And we need to see ourselves as agile and are rapidly changing with the environment and industries. And it's essentially important for small to medium-sized businesses. It really is. Because if we don't change it, they won't bring us in early. And this is the problem that we're facing right now. So for small businesses, us escaping the HR paradigm is especially critical, as they often lack the resources of larger organizations. So in order for them to compete, these businesses must rely and maximize every contribution of every employee. And us embracing a more strategic approach will help them punch above their weight. So in attracting, developing, and retaining top talent. So what I say is HR is not just about pushing paper. And I know all of you know this, but I don't think everyone else does. And this is what I want to get out there. I want to present this out to everyone. So if we escape it and use data-driven, we'll be seen as a proactive force in the organization and a strategic partner. That's all I've got. So I've got questions, but thank you. Anyone have any questions? No, I nailed it. Honestly, I was nervous about this one because I don't want to think HR people are bad. And it's just constant when I go across, whether I'm in Asia, Dubai, the US, it's always the same thing of like, well, HR is just a cost center. You can only do this. This is it. And I was like, do you not realize we can do all this other stuff for you? Like we can actually look at everything and grow your business. And yeah, that's what I face every single day. So I talk in the US about it, about trying to change how we are perceived, because it'll help our careers. And I often get asked, how do you jump to a CEO or a COO from HR? To get to CEO, you have to understand either ops or finance. Like you have to tie that in. And people ops is one of the easiest ways to understand to become a CEO. And that's something we've been working with, coaching the current CHRO to become CEO. They want to be one of the first companies because they realize all the stuff going with employees. But we were very clearly told by the board, no HR person will become a CEO unless they understand ops. So all finance. So they're the two elements that you must understand within the organization. And I would argue if you're not a numbers person, ops is probably a little bit easier. If you have a CPA or an accountant, then that'll be finance. But that's basically what I got asked. And that's the number one thing that we recommend is understand as much about the business as you can, especially the operations, how it integrates. And that's how you could get picked for CEO. So that's something there. So, but yeah, if it helps you, if you want to get to that C-suite, then on that level, then that's where I would go. So, well, thank you so much.